name, or is that the hyphen your entire name, your last name? I'm just curious. Then what should I call you? Is it because I'm horrible
My
with
first,
names.
yeah, my first name is James actually, but
James.
yeah, but
Okay.
my handle online is just Alan Munch. So
Okay.
it's like extra
No,
confusing, I
that's
guess.
fine. Well, that's also good because that explains because I assume you're the flat buffers guy, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
Excellent. That's why I recognized the Allen part or the Allen part of your name. I didn't. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm slow. You'll get used to that. Okay. All right. So here we go. Welcome everybody to the October 30th Cloud Event Serverless X Registry Working Group call. Um, let's see. Got 7 people. 2, 4, 6, 7. Cool. All right. John isn't doing anything there yet. Okay. So KubeCon EU. Anybody else besides Klaus and Clemens possibly interested in doing that? Okay, still have a little bit of time to decide, but let me know if you or know somebody who wants to do it. All right, before we jump into PRs, any other issues people want to bring up? Okay, in that case, Clemens, I know these next couple PRs are just for your tooling, but maybe you can just very quickly summarize what's going on in case people are interested.
Yeah, so first one, so these are all code fixes. This one is the Avro. So we have a schema generator that takes our X registry models and turns them into Avro and into JSON schema document schemas, in addition to creating open API documents for our APIs. So that's kind of just automation from the models. And we have a a wildcard kind of property model, and the Avro part was not generating code correctly for this, and then this ended up being a bit more involved because you need to go and create generic types for Avro, and Avro doesn't have an any type, so you need to go and model this explicitly. So that's kind of how this is a bit more involved than one would expect. But it's basically just to create a Avro schema that's more precise.
Okay.
That's a first bug, a first fix.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, concerns, or wants more time to review it? Okay. Any objection to approving that one then?
Good.
Cool. All right, next one. Hold on. Do, 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 do. All right, next one, Clemens.
That has that's a follow-on to this. And can you click on 358?
Um,
That here, the
yep.
bug per se. Um, yeah, so there were the oh,
Is that the right number?
it's interesting.
Is there a different issue we should be looking at?
Yeah, I'm a little confused because the GitHub tooling inside of VS picked up the bug. It's the it's 385. Ah, see, that's how I got it. So probably I flipped this. Yes, 385. Make this 385. Okay.
Oops. Okay, hold on.
This is okay.
Let's go back over here.
Basically, there were some enum values that are in the we have enum values in the case of um, our usage roles for endpoints, and those were not generated correctly. So I've added that, and that unmasked some downstream little bug. So kind of had to fix them all together. But it's also just the schema generator update.
Okay. Same question. Anybody have any questions, concerns, or wants more time to review?
That would surprise me.
Yeah. Okay. Any objection to approving? Cool. All right. Next. Okay, quick one. As usual, just a whole bunch of minor typos and cleanup as I was making changes for something. The one change I did want to point out, which is slightly normative, is here. When we describe the errors, the standard errors that the spec actually lists, there wasn't any normative language in these things. We talked about, okay, each error has a code, a type, an instance field, and there wasn't any normative language. So I added some normative language in there, and just to clarify that it's not just, hey, be nice if you did this, but you must do this if you're going to use these errors. The one bit that I changed though was instance. So instance was just a URL to the entity being processed. And it wasn't clear to me whether it was a URL, it was an absolute URL or a relative URL. So what I decided to do was I thought it'd be best to be consistent with everything else. And in most places, when we have URLs to entities, they are absolute URLs. So I started off and I said, okay, it must be a URL. It's recommended that be an absolute URL if possible. If they can't, for some reason, figure out what the absolute URL is, then it needs to at least be the XID. And I didn't make that a must, I made it a should, just in case there's something else going on and they need to point to something else that isn't necessarily in the system, but that means something to them in their environment. So I think this gives them the freedom and the guidance that's necessary, right? It should be an absolute. If not, make it the XID. If all else fails and you have to do something completely different, okay, fine. That's why it's a should, and you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions on that? I know Clemens, you're okay with that. That's good. And Klaus and Lila both approved that offline. Okay. And the rest of it was just typos and minor little tweaks to the text, nothing big. Does anybody want more time or to review or question or have any questions on that? Any objection to approving? Cool. And last one from Clemens. You want to talk to this one? Or this one, I should say, this PR. Clemens, you on mute?
Sorry, I was talking the whole time. Yeah, open the change file.
Boom.
So this is basically just doing an update for based on changes that we made. So this is using adding this data schema formats definition, removing the pounds before the data schema URI, and then renaming format into protocol. So this is basically just a cleanup for this one.
Yep. Cool. Anybody have any questions, concerns? Want more time to review? Okay. Any objection to approving? Cool. All right. Done with the easy stuff. Now, James, first of all, welcome, and David to the group. I apologize. I'm going to do it publicly. James, I apologize. I know you opened this, 3 weeks ago? It completely fell off my radar. I should have added it to the agenda on a previous call. So maybe you can just quickly talk to this and then people can ask questions. And then it's probably too soon for us to approve it today, unless everybody just absolutely loves it. But chances are today's more of an intro so people can look at it. And then next week we can vote on it if it's ready. So go ahead and explain it to everybody, please.
Yeah, so the use case or the kind of the PR is just a working example of using flat buffers with the cloud events specification. So I was looking in, I don't recall which directory, but there's like a directory where, it has like protobuf and some of the other things in there, right? And so this is basically just a copy and paste of what was in there for, I think, like protobuf or one of the ones, and then I just kind of went through and like changed stuff around more or less, just like from just like a copy and paste over. the use case, so I don't know if it would help at all, but I can kind of tell you about how we're planning on using it. So we actually already have implemented this and are using it within an application. So the application and use case that we have is we have a Rust is the language that we're using, and we're putting together a custom edge proxy. And then from that edge proxy, what we're really trying to do is have a zero copy, low latency, where we're not doing like, we're barely touching any deserialization, serialization. So kind of zero copy sort of thing, so that we can do really fast, really fast routing out of the proxy and into wherever we need to send it to. So that's kind of the high level.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about flat buffers itself? Because not everybody will know what that actually is.
So I'm not like an expert at it. So from my understanding, it's like a binary format. It has a couple of bytes to kind of do memory addressable kind of field information within it. It's typed, and so what you can do is like read the kind of the headers on it based on that, and then it'll give you the memory location of like where like stuff is. And so there's like it's like cross platform, cross tooling. So there's a bunch of different languages that are supported, and then what you can do is you give it a flat buffer kind of definition file, similar to like protobuf or something like that. And then what you can do is then compile, like you compile out of the kind of the flat buffer definition, and then it'll kind of do some code generation for like, oh, here's how you can use it.
Interesting.
Hey, James, can I add to that if you don't mind?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so real quick, the creator of it's very similar to Protobuf. They're both created by Google. Where they differ is that Protobuf is really an efficient serialization for network and storage, and flat buffers is a zero copy, like James mentioned. So there's no deserialization deserialization needed. So as far as performance is concerned, or any induced latency, flat buffers are very, very fast compared to protobuf. There's no, whereas in protocol buffers, or protobuf, pardon me, you encode, transmit, and then decode, versus flat buffers, you're reading directly from the buffer. There is an option to serialize, but you're reading directly from the buffer, so there isn't a deserialization piece. So, and then the typical usage for, let's say, protobufs would be like RPCs, backend services, and what have you, versus flat buffers, it really leans towards real-time data processing due to the low latency. So think of it as protobufs on steroids, without the serialization piece. It performs the same thing. You still have the schemas and what have you, just like protobufs. It's just extremely fast.
So you're so you have an API that's basically overlaid over the data structure without you having to go and do a copy into yet another data structure. You're reading straight out of the buffer.
Correct.
Okay.
Is there
if we support both protobuf and flat buffers, is that us shipping the Google org chart?
Wait, shipping the Google what? I'm sorry?
Shipping the Google org chart?
Oh, no.
Okay. So we have two current protocols that are schema bound or are schema dependent, and we have we have a few things that are in conflict with being have a hard schema dependency. So I just want to go on and talk to them along the spec proposal. So first of all, our a cloud event has effectively in the envelope portion and has the payload portion. And in JSON and in XML, which basically are using, you can go and serialize the entire event as in JSON. And so it's many people are kind of fooled by this, and then they don't see the separation between the two pieces. But it's really kind of the data object is a thing that is that's kind of on its own and carries the payload really as an independent binary blob. So the question, and then we also have extensibility. So we have some attributes that we can go and that are well known, and then do have extensions that are kept separate. So having those things in mind, I just want to go and look at it. So what's example with type payloads advanced? What are we looking at?
I don't know. I was just scrolling. Is there a particular spot, James or David, you want me to scroll to?
Yeah, it's towards the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay,
is that the right thing to look at?
It would be the very bottom one, the cloud event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wait, so wait. So is it this?
No, scroll further.
Up or down?
There's a cloud event at the bottom, down. Yes.
Bottom of the
here.
code snippet. There you go. The 2 days.
No, not that far. Doug,
I'm so confused.
Nervous scrolling finger today. That.
Okay, this.
Thank
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I couldn't see that. I'm blind.
Okay. So scroll a little bit further up so you can go and see all of it.
Okay.
That. Okay. Thank you, Doug.
I'm sorry. Jeez.
Thank you for your scrolling services today.
Oh
all right.
my God.
Good. Yeah. So here you have an example where that cloud event has all the pieces, but the cloud event schema has a hard dependency on a very specific type, and that is the type data.
Yeah, so that was just an example, and I don't think it would need to be part of the spec, right? It's just like an example of like, oh, if you wanted to do type data, you could, but so I think what you're saying is we should remove that to reduce any confusion. And because if you look at the very bottom line of the table cloud event where it has data, just U byte, right? Because the spec itself is, from what I understand, is just an envelope around data, right?
Correct.
And so that's what we're hoping to do with the flat buffer stuff.
How would you reference a flat buffer schema? What is it? So this is a flat buffer schema. How are they usually stored or exchanged?
It would be through the flat buffers file.
Okay.
Through
wait, are you talking about transport? Are you talking about transport or store?
So let's say we're using the data schema field to identify which flat buffer schema applies to the payload, so that you can go and send a flat. There's two things to do, right? There is a flat buffer encoded payload. That's one aspect, and then there's a flat buffer encoded cloud event. And those things can happen together, or they can be separate. You could have a JSON encoded cloud event, but it carries a flat buffer encoded payload, or you can have a flat buffer encoded cloud event that still carries, for whatever reason, a JSON encoded payload. So what goes into the data schema field?
It's just going to be a U byte. was what the proposal was for.
Yeah, but so in the data schema field, there's are these files usually held in URIs? What are like? How are these
I
flat
don't
buffer?
know what the data schema field is. Can you tell me?
Oh, so data content type basically declares what is the data encoding for data. So that would be presumably whatever Google no, application slash Google dot VND dot flat buffers. And then data schema is a reference to the flat buffer declaration, which means the flat buffer schema that then is applicable to decode that data file. So that would presumably then be the URI basically to wherever that flat buffer file is stored, right?
Okay. And
So
you're asking where is that stored?
yeah, like I have not done nothing with flat buffers, so I don't know what the best practice is there.
I think flat buffers work a little bit differently than what you might be thinking, Clemens, because I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I just thought it was just like a memory model of the structure, right? So are you asking like how they map that incoming payload to the model that's in the buffer essentially?
Yeah, I mean you get a binary blob, and the binary blob is known to be flat buffer encoded.
Gotcha.
How do you configure your system
To
to go and
know, yeah.
get the data out?
Yeah. Okay. Does that make sense, Alan? Yeah, I think at first I was having a little bit of trouble understanding, but I think now I get what Clemens is asking. Basically, you have this flat buffer. Let's say we have version 1 of, let's say, foo, right, which is some structure that just has an int. Then let's say some other service that also uses foo but has version 2. So they have two buffers, but they are actually two different representations, right? Because
Correct.
V2 might have, another field, it might be a different type. So how do you map that accordingly? I mean, the byte array is fine, but you still need to map it somehow to the correct foo.
Well, wait, I'm still trying to figure out whether we have a catch-22 situation here, because you can't even get to that data schema field without the schema itself. Isn't that correct?
But so we can standardize the outer schema, right? We can say there's a version 1.0 buffer schema for these flat buffers. But then for me, the question is like for the inner one for data, right? If that is, and I think that's where we were just headed, right? How do we declare what is in there?
And if I'm reading this right, that would be, I'm sorry, James.
Go ahead, David.
I would say that would be implementation specific. So where we were going with this was using flat buffers as the outer wrapper. So in this case, it would be the cloud event that would be standardized. And then the data would be based on implementation. So the user at that point, you're using the cloud event flat buffer as the transport packet or the protocol. Yeah. And then within the data, it would be specific for the event.
Okay.
That is coming through. Now you could in the data itself put version and schema itself to address your concerns specifically as far as what you're going to do. But it is really, you need, the way it right now it's architected is that you would have to know the schema and the version prior to, or I'm sorry, you would have to have those definitions prior to for the data payload. Does that make sense? Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you have let's see, are there there's no type units in this thing, right? In flat buffers?
No, there's not. It's just raw binary of what it maps to, basically.
Okay. Yeah. So I think then if we're really focused on the envelope and making this another format, basically, then I think it will be good to remove the typed data example here, and then really make it a formal flat buffers schema that you can then go and use. So that makes it relatively simple. I think just along the same, it's there's one wart / complication that is the same for all the schema bound things that we have right now, Avro and Proto, and now this one is that extensions sit in kind of this extra bucket, and we have been kind of struggling. If there's two versions effectively of an Avro encoding in the repo, there's one that is the main Avro encoding, and there's another one which sits in, help me, Doug.
I remember.
Where's the fast Avro? We have two approaches to Avro. What did that land in working drafts? Yes,
Talk about
Avro
compact.
Compact. Correct. Can you open that? Where is the actual spec for this compact schema? There's a link to it.
Where's that?
There's the link. Yep. So this schema actually does what you just did, and this is the compact format. And what that does is basically goes and gives each field, its own, each well-known field, kind of its own type and then value, and then we have this extensions map. And the other one, kind of the official early one that we have. There's a cloud events on AVSC.
Is there?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's the one. It's the same. It's same. It's fine. Just click.
Okay.
Show that. Yeah. That basically only has attributes, and the attribute is basically a map, and that can be of certain values. So it's basically saying, there's all the attributes are basically just in a map, undifferentiated with all the values, and then we have data alongside of it, where we basically say, yes, you have to go and send the attribute, the name along with it, with the values. But that preserves effectively this extensibility that exists, this easy extensibility that exists with the regular JSON format. And the thought behind this was that if there would be a cloud events attribute that we would come up with that would then be promoted from an extension to start off to part of the standard, then we wouldn't break anything. It wouldn't have to go and modify all the schemas. That was the thought for why we didn't choose in the original one here to make those explicit. I think where we are now, we are effectively here the guardians of 1.0 trying to not rev the spec, and so I think at this point making a decision like you did, of effectively hard coding the seven well-known attributes and then creating an extension bucket is no longer as contentious as it would have been whatever, 5 years ago when we were doing, or probably even longer, when we settled cloud events.
Well, and also in my mind, it's also because we didn't have a choice, and that's what my questions are going to be kind of related to that. Let me ask a question. And this is probably more of a flat buffer question than your spec proposal question. These are optional. If for example, if subject is not there, are there any bytes taken up by this?
I would
Yeah,
have
I
to
think
test that. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay, then kind of related to that is, does flat buffers assume the same memory or it's the same architecture on both sides? Like little
No.
Indian versus big Indian kind of stuff.
Oh, that I don't know. Sorry, James. Sorry.
No, because what it uses is when so you throw it through the compiler, right? Which it writes a table of it basically builds like what it would look like in memory. So it handles all of the, architectural issues essentially.
But I'm confused. If it figures out what something's going to look like in memory, okay, fine, I get that. But what if you then send this over the wire and how that thing looks in memory on the other side might actually look different because you're on a different architecture, right? Little Indian versus big Indian. C versus Java might store something in memory differently. And so reading it as raw bytes into your data structure may not be that simple without some sort of
Right,
conversion. So I'm
right.
curious, how does all that work
That
without you losing the performance that you're trying to get?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it makes the assumption. Okay, yeah, I thought you were asking something different, but yeah, that's actually a really good question that I'm not too familiar with.
Yeah, because I could totally buy if basically the exact same chip on both sides or similar enough chips on both sides, same language on both sides. Then it's like sure, you're basically doing a mem copy from one system to another, and I get that, and I get how that can work. But if they're not the same system, if they're not the same language, and they're not the same, you know, chip architecture, or how things are stored in memory byte-wise on both sides, I don't see how this can work. But that's why it's more of a flat buffer question than a statement about your proposal. So that was just more curious than anything else. Because what I'm wondering about is if subject being absent doesn't take up any bytes, then how does the architecture on the other side receiving this know that the next thing in the byte stream is subject that's empty, which doesn't actually exist, versus time, right? How does it know what the next thing is if all it is just a bunch of bytes, one right after the other? Because understanding how that works, I think would lend itself nicely to understand how extensions should be handled.
Yeah, so I did like 2 seconds of research, so take this with a grain of salt. But
Go for it.
but basically it is an issue. It is a known issue with flat buffers. If you have different architectural formats, especially with like network protocols, if you don't do the conversion, you will get an error basically.
Okay, so that answers the first question then. So did you, in your quick reading, or James and David, do you guys know what the bytes look like in memory if some of these are absent, but some of them are present? How does it know whether the first thing there is data content type or just time because the other three are missing? Do you guys understand that?
I haven't tested that.
Okay, because like I said, I think that'd be useful to understand. Because if we don't know the answer, if we can't answer that question, then I'm not convinced that extensions by themselves will even work. Because
Yeah.
you have to understand, you have to have some way of labeling these extensions to know what extensions are in there and where their name ends and where their value begins, assuming they're in some sort of serialized order kind of thing. And I think understanding how that would work, I'm sorry, understanding how these optional attributes work will lend itself nicely to how we're going to handle extensions. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
so I did 5 minutes of research. If you
There
want
we
me to
go.
give you the spiel on this, okay.
Sure,
So
go for it.
So explicit optional, you can mark things as explicitly optional, which is just like, for instance, if it's going to be int value, you can do int equals null. That gives you the option of being int or basically null, and null has just a special value.
Mhm.
Okay, so that would then mean that these are there just with nulls.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that answers my question then. Okay, in that case, we would need to make sure that extensions. Well, okay, Ben, since you've been doing some reading, is there anything in the bytes that say data content type? I'm guessing no.
No, it doesn't.
Right. In that case, for extensions, where would the extension name itself be kept? We would need to answer that question because you have to have that name someplace so the other side knows what extensions actually exist.
But how is extension attribute defined? Is there a type extension attribute defined somewhere in here?
You're talking about like oh, here, well, there's this. Oh, there we go. It's a table.
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah, it's key value. That's why.
Yeah. Okay, that might answer my question right then. Okay. So then if there were no extensions, there would in essence be a null for this entire thing. If it's not null, then it has to be a table. Okay, that can work.
and one more thing. Since this is a so we have some governance rules regarding what goes where, and protobuf is kind of at the edge of this of the rule set because the CNCF has very heavy dependencies on gRPC, which is a CNCF project, which then leans on protobuf, which is a Google proprietary project, and because of that dependency, we have taken on Google protobuf into the official set of bindings. However, FlatBuffer is a Google-owned project, and it's actually not even, as it says, not staffed by any full-time Google employee, and is managed by a small team of 20 percenters. So response time and expertise may vary. So I think we have a special folder into which these sorts of things would go, which is our how do you call this, Doug?
I don't. Oh, proprietary.
The proprietary folder.
Yeah, hold on. So we have. Oh wait, no. Oh, you're talking about this, right?
Yeah. So basically, this just like the Google Cloud PubSub protocol binding. This would be something that we would have to go and link to externally. So the spec basically goes into a separate repo, and then we link to it. Because one of the things, and I'm telling you why, and that's not being so I very much like the proposal, but we're about interop, and we're about making sure that people use interoperable protocols and preferably protocols that are in a open standards organization, where many people can participate, and where a single vendor cannot switch the license on people, or cannot make a unilateral decision to just go and change things up without anybody else being able to speak up, like going from Proto 2 to Proto 3. And so that's why we made the call to say, like, anything that's proprietary and it's not in either Apache or the CNCF or Eclipse, or in orgs like Oasis, is going into kind of have we applied this model to it. That doesn't mean we're not going to discuss it here, but this basically needs to live in a different place.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I don't know if this would be possible or not, but what if we reached out to Google to see if they'd be open to doing that?
I mean, that's great if they would be willing to go and make the project, basically put the project under the CNCF. That'd be great.
Okay.
Well, wait, Clement, I'm confused. The project meaning FlatBuffers?
Yeah.
Because FlatBuffers is open source already, isn't it?
No, it's open source, but it's proprietary. Google owns it.
It's Apache.
Yeah, but
we only let protobuf. We only allowed for the protobuf binding in spite of it being proprietary Google, because of the gRPC dependency. Because that whole world is, but this is copyright Google. They can do whatever and you need to have a Google individual contributor license agreement and all these things.
Okay, because I didn't think it had to be like under CNCF for us to consider it.
No, it's
Or
not. It's not
I
under
thought
CNCF. It needs to be. It needs to be under a neutral. It needs to be under neutral governance for us to take it.
okay, because I thought as long as they allowed other people to contribute, that was good enough.
No.
Interesting. Okay.
That makes sense. So I think I have an action plan for some of the things I need to change on it. So
Mhm.
hopefully over the next couple of weeks I can work through that stuff. And then we can change our code, David, to kind of reflect those changes so we can kind of test it out and see how it works. And then I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but I'll see if I can reach out to a couple of people that I work with and see if we can reach out to Google.
Yeah.
And
Great.
see if they'd be willing. Because if they're not maintaining it, it might be in their best interest to maybe.
Yeah, it'd be better. It really, it would be better to move it. Sometimes the Google folks have, keen interest, since like protobuf is at the heart of everything what they do apparently. So they are unwilling for anybody else to talk to have any say in it, and it's what worries people outside of Google about it. But this one, not sure, but we have in our primer document we basically have a section that talks about this, and I'm worried about giving people effectively advice through support to say, oh, go use this, and then there's a vendor who goes and just revs it or changes the license on it or kills it, well, Google can kill it because they own it. Even though they're just volunteers working on it, there's nobody who can go and rescue it from Google if Google says, it basically just goes and says, no, we're going to delete this from our repo. So that's the thing I'm worried about as a CNCF guy here.
Got it. Okay.
I also had one. Oh, sorry, Doug.
Yeah, just quickly, it might be nice if you actually turn this into a formal PR instead of just an issue. That way, it's actually in the working draft folder and stuff like that, and it's a real file instead of just marked down inside of a comment. And while you're doing that, you may want to just sort of clean it up because it sounds like, or it looks like, it's like it's like two proposals in one, kind of like you have the abstract here. Then if I keep scrolling down, then I see an abstract again. So it's like the same thing is duplicated. So you might just want to clean that kind of stuff up.
Yeah,
That
I
makes
can do
sense.
that.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
then
sorry,
what
Ben,
I
go
was
ahead.
thinking, yeah, sorry. What I was thinking about as well, like because I read through the proposal, and one thing, because you made extensions in array as an array, you could have duplicates in there. So I think we need to figure out how that's resolved in the actual proposal. Like, if you have duplicate keys, what do you do, right? Or if like someone, like you should fail, right? But how, like we just need to make sure we call that out.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I have a
Any other?
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it the YouTube recording? Is that posted somewhere?
Yes, hold on. I thought I put the link to, whoops. The recording's here. Let's see where this takes me. Maybe
Okay.
it's not old. Let me see. Yeah, you want to look at the live stuff. So yeah, they're actually going on right now. You can see right here. Then the old ones are all up here.
Okay.
Should automatically
Sweet.
appear here. Okay.
I'll rewatch it so I have all the kind of discussion points and action items that I need to take care of.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah. Yeah. That's the right link from the meeting minute. And you have a link to the meeting minutes, right?
Yep.
Okay. Just in case, I'll place it into the chat too. There you go.
And then I also had a question for you, Doug, kind of it's also related to this. With the extension names or the keys specifically, are those case sensitive?
Yes. They are. They
Okay.
have the same constraints as all the other attribute names.
Okay, cool.
Lowercase only, case sensitive, no separators.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
With a restricted set of characters. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any last questions, comments? Or James and David? All right, in that case, thank you guys for putting this together. We appreciate it. Hopefully everything will work out good.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, hold on, let me. Okay, Ben, would you like to bring us up to date on the changes you've made to your PR?
Yeah. So thank you, Doug, for spending some time reviewing this. I did a bunch of grammatical updates, and Doug made a lot of good call outs, especially with like clarity. And yeah, so I think it's in a good place. The one thing that's still in the works is we're still trying to get security to approve the idea of the array. Well, it is approved. We just need to get the final stamp, like have it on paper so we can actually ship it out. But yeah, we would have this like ordering of an array of the fields that were signed. That way you can add any sort of custom, you can add any sort of field that you want or extension key that you want. And you'd be able to sign that. And then in addition, I wish John was here, but hopefully he looks at the recording. But he asked about where you signed or where you verified. And I misremembered. I thought security security does want you as early as possible. So, if you sign it like at the payload level, great. But I understand that that is really hard to do. So I remember I asked them a long time ago, but I just misremembered. But they said that the earlier, the better. So it's not that you have to do it. You could do it after deserialization. If we move to this this array method, it would need to be after deserialization, which I think is fine. But I just wanted to correct that from the last discussion.
Okay.
But yeah, that was pretty much it. And I think I answered all your questions, Doug. And you're right about I read your last response about time being must instead of just saying that it needs to be in seconds. It must be in seconds. So I'll go ahead and make that update as well.
Yeah, the one thing I think might still be open from our discussion is whether this proposal will support multiple signs.
Yes,
multiple
yes,
sign-ins. Yeah.
yeah, and I think I think it's a different thing because it is considered like at least in security to be a different thing. Like it's considered a totally different algorithm. It's considered just to be completely different. That's why you have this concept called chaining and then like audit trails as another one, which can do. It's not the only solution, but those are the two solutions that you can use to achieve what you're talking about, Doug. And I think I made it sound like those are the only two solutions. So I just want to say that those aren't the only two solutions, but those are probably the two most obvious solutions that you would use. Is something like chaining because it's so prevalent. Like GitHub does something very similar with their signed commits, for example. So they using a chain algorithm. So, but what I was getting at with that, but they also have signatures at an individual level, right? So like I think having those as two separate proposals, mostly because that proposal is actually going to be far more complicated than this proposal itself. And I think getting signing right first and then building chaining on later makes sense. With just kind of the flow of things because yeah, I think we can always add like what GitHub does and just support that sort of chaining.
I could buy into that as long as the chaining add-on that you're talking about is compatible with this proposal, meaning you don't have to use one or the other meaning you could, for example, sign something with this, and then the chaining stuff is just additive to this, and you don't, as a receiver, necessarily need to know a completely different spec in order to make it all work.
Yes, absolutely. And I agree. And I'll give you an example of like how you can kind of think about like how training could potentially work with this spec. So you have the SHA-256, right? And this message. So how you would chain that is that you would take this new SHA, add that as the first like thing to be SHA'd, and then add this, the other, payload signature on top of that, right? And then SHA, continue the whole SHA flow after you shard the shard again, right? So that would be a form of chaining that you could do with this proposal today. But it just needs to be laid out. And there's a lot of questions is like, how does trust work? How do you, go back and, how do you go backwards in this whole cycle of like, or does order matter of like when you're looking at things, et cetera, et cetera. And if you did it my way, right, order does matter. So it really matters like, what the approach is. But yeah, I agree 100% that it needs to be based or compatible with this solution. And I think most chaining algorithms today support both elliptic curve and RSA, which DSSE supports. So you'd be able to do that today with the existing chaining algorithms.
Okay. Well, I know you want to do this whole thing in baby steps, which is great. Excuse me. Would it be possible for you to write down as a separate doc that is not going to be necessarily part of the formal proposal, but write out how you see the chaining working? Because I'm less interested in the mechanics of how the signing happens itself and more in how things appear in the cloud event. So for example, if we only have one field called DSSE material, I don't think that's going to work with chaining. We need to define in the chaining part of the proposal how the old DSSE material attribute gets moved to someplace else. Because the minute you wrapper this with another signing, you can't have them both live in the same attribute, right? The signing material has to have you have to have two distinct signing things: the original signing and then the secondary signing. And you can't, unless you're going to define something in this sort of data structure you have here of how to nest or how to put the nested signing in there, it's not clear to me how it all works with a single attribute. So if you could just write up, not necessarily a concrete proposal that's going to be set in stone, but a rough idea of how you see it working. So we could say, okay, great. Yes, we can accept the baby step because we have ideas of how the next step was going to work. We're just not going to formalize that yet, but we could look at it and say, yep, okay, there's definitely a solution here. It's not going to be impossible to do that. That's all I'm looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think
Okay.
you called out something that I didn't even think about. It sounds like you want to see what the end goal looks like, which I think makes a lot of sense. And I think because I've been working in this space for so long, writing this proposal, that I already have the end goal in my mind. And so like, I realize that you don't have that same context, and I think it's fair. So I'll go ahead and spend some time writing out what that could potentially look like. And I also want to call out the complexities that are added with this. So when people are reading this, they know what to look out for and what to think about as well.
Makes sense. Okay. We only have 5 minutes left. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on this? I know most people probably not had a chance to do a deep review yet.
Yeah, I need to and soon to go and look at the which is the spec, like the DSSA protocol spec. Is it the Secure Systems Lab in NYU?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
So there's a link to it, I think, somewhere in the proposal too. Yeah, DSC protocol.
Where is it? Is there a references thing at the bottom? Hold on.
No, I think you skipped over it. But yeah,
Of
it's
course I
towards the
did.
top.
What makes you choose DSSE?
So the reason why we chose DSSE is mostly because it doesn't come with the slew of CVEs that a lot of the other signing algorithms have today. Because it is so simple, it's really hard to I'm not going to say it's really hard, but it's easier to see in a big lens, like where the security issues may be. And there hasn't been any CVEs that I know of with DSSE even today, and it's several years, or it's like I think like 6 or 7 years old already. So
how popular is it?
it's popular in security people. So like security people love DSSE. And I didn't even know what DSSE was until I started talking with security folks here at Apple, and it's used within Apple as well. So
Okay.
so it is used. It's just that And I think on their website, I think they talk about who actually uses it as well. And I think they mentioned banks. I'll try to find something for you, Clement.
Yeah,
So you have some.
it's kind of the same reason that I said earlier, right? It's like if we go and pick that up, how prevalent or how niche is it, and are we if we make this the one security system mechanism that's associated with cloud events,
Mhm.
how hard is that for other people to go and actually use it and pick that up? That's kind of one of my thoughts here.
Yeah, and that's fair. And to kind of give you an idea of like how widely it is used to kind of like hopefully settle those fears, it's actually
Hmm.
supported by AWS. Multiple services, RDS, EBS, Glue, all support DSSC.
Okay.
Amazon S3 also supports DSSC. JFrog supports DSSC. So a
Okay.
lot of major companies do support it.
But the
Okay.
real question is, for Clemens, does Azure support it?
Fair
Yeah, I
enough.
don't know, I certainly Azure messaging doesn't, because I would know, but that doesn't mean anything, right? It's just I'm just since you're an expert and I'm not, I just want to ask that question. It's certainly not a disqualification of criteria. It seems very simple, and
Yeah,
simple is good.
yeah, for sure. And I'll highlight that in the PR too, that it is widely used because like I said, I didn't even know what this, like I never even heard of it, and I've been in software for 15 years, right? I've never even heard of this thing. And so like so I completely understand when people say DSSC, they're like, what is this? I've never heard of this, and like whenever you hear about something, especially in security that, like you haven't heard about it, you're like, oh, my red flags go up a little bit. But yeah, I'll definitely put that companies use it, and I'll list the companies and some of the APIs showing its use.
Cool. Okay. And
Yeah.
obviously, as a reminder for people, please look over the PR when you guys get a chance. Okay. Any other comments, Ben?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I have a few action items on my plate, so I'll go ahead and do that. But yeah, please, everyone, if you could please look at it, because I think the more eyes, the better.
Yep. All right, cool. In that case, we're technically at the top of the hour. We've made it to the end of the agenda. So a different James, I believe he lives in Australia, opened up all these issues and PRs. Clemens, I did ping him several times to see if he could chat with us in real time, and have
Okay.
not gotten, he has not gotten back to me. So at this point, I feel bad that it took so long for us to get back to him, but then on the flip side, he hasn't gotten back to us after many, many weeks of saying, hey, let's talk. I'm inclined to close these 3 issues and PRs and then reopen them if he reappears.
Yeah.
I don't think any of these are critical. So Clemens, you're saying, yeah.
I agree.
Does anybody else have any objection to doing that? We think, no, we need to give him more time. Anybody want to chime in? Is there any?
So he has
Go ahead.
actually a few issues on our end as well, and we've had the same conversation because we've tried to reach out to him, and he's been pretty unresponsive even in the issues. So I'm also in favor of closing them and doing what you suggested.
Okay, cool. In that case, let me formally ask the question. Does anybody disagree with approving to close these 3 issues and PRs? Okay, cool. In that case, we are done at the end of the agenda. I think I got everybody for the attendee list. Does anybody have any last comments, questions, topics to bring up? Cool. Good call today, guys. I appreciate it. Now, I'll talk again next week. And happy, for those of you who celebrate it, happy Halloween tomorrow. Go out there and scare some little kids. Yes.
It was nice meeting y'all.
All right,
I
thanks.
appreciate the feedback.
You.
Thanks a lot.
Yep.